Carliana Jones, and I recently graduated with my bachelor's in business data analytics with a concentration in marketing at the University of Akron, and I'm currently pursuing my MBA at the University of Akron as well. I'm also a current student athlete. I'm on the volleyball team in my final year. I'm honored to be a BUPA finalist, and my undergraduate paper explores the impact of airport capacity changes on the air quality. So essentially, the research question I hope to answer is what is the impact of airport expansions on the air quality of respective counties? And beyond this overall effect, I also wanted to dive into seeing if the size of the expansion matters as well. My motivation behind this research actually started before I even started this. With volleyball, I was traveling across the country to go to many competitions, and I was always at airports. So I wanted to see or kind of dive into more that correlation between the airport's effects on like the neighboring neighborhoods. So that was like my personal take on it. So then as I dive deeper into it, my motivation for this research specifically can be summarized by the fact that poor air quality creates adverse health impacts. So it negatively impacts the health of individuals. Also, the transportation industries are contributing factors to the worsening of air quality. And then, bigger picture, the way in which trends are going, the increase in excessive air pollutants also impacts the rate of global warming. So I think it's a very important topic to cover and kind of dive into, and it's personable to me. So that was my motivation behind this. So let me highlight some of the salient points of the previous research on this topic. So a few key themes that I found was that the industrial factory expansion deteriorates the health of nearby residents. So the key word here is factory expansion. My research dives into airport expansion, so it was interesting to see that in a separate sector with factory expansions, it has a negative effect on the health of individuals. So seeing that correlation gave me a better idea going into this, my own research. Also, not only are residents impacted, but housing prices are impacted by the noise, air, and water pollution from airports. Then taking a step further and looking at the highest emission distribution from operations within airports are actually during the takeoff and landing procedures um, as they're making their way gate and taken off. I also found that the airports can reduce emissions through streamlining internal operations. This includes timely taxiing, having the optimal thrust levels so they're not wasting the gas and they're not using an excessive amount. And then also the runway choice, depending on the weather, time of day, wind conditions, all these other factors that are incorporated into these choices. Now, despite all of these negative impacts, I also found that airport expansion can have a positive economic impact with the creation of jobs and income benefits for the residents and workers who are participating in this expansion. So my research contribution, after looking at previous literature that really focused on airline emissions and pollutant particles data found in the residential vicinity, it focused on maybe a handful, like one airport or a handful of airports over a small period of time. My research uses capacity changes in employments from the airports nationwide to find correlation with good air quality days. So employments, I'm going to use this word a lot. It just is another word for passengers on an aircraft. So what makes my research unique is it uses an indirect measure of flight data to compare it to the respective air quality data instead of particles. So not only does it make it more easy to understand, but digestible with the results that I find. Now, looking at the past 20 years from 1999 to 2019, the main databases I used were the Environmental Protection Agency for the air quality at the county level, the airport employment data at the city airport level from the Federal Aviation Administration. And since this airport employment data was at the city airport level, I needed the third database, the United States cities, that had both city and county as a crosswalk data set in order to make the employment data at the county level so an analysis could be done. This is just for clarification before I dive deeper. What different types of air quality days mean, specifically good air quality days. The green is what I'm going to be focusing on during my research. So a few key trends that I found intriguing when analyzing the summary data include that the ratio of good air quality days has a positive trend and that the other types of days have negative trends, such as moderate, unhealthy, all the other types of days. I also found that 97% of the days measuring air quality index are good or moderate days, which is what we want to see. We want most of the days to end up being good, healthy air quality days. Finally, I found that employment capacity increases over time. So in this first graph, I noticed that the ratio of good air quality days, as shown in the blue, is increasing, as I said, over this 20-year period. And the ratio of moderate days in the green is decreasing. It's just easier to see. And it's what we want, the good ratio of good days to be increasing over this time and as high as possible in general. And then took a closer look at the number of good air quality days by county. As shown in this map, it highlights the overall spread of which counties experience fewer or more good air quality days. So red means fewer good air quality days, green means more, and then gray means that the data was not available for that county. So as you can see, fewer air quality days are located around larger metropolitan areas, such as New York, Chicago, and you can see a bit of Texas and a large section in California. Most of the green I found is localized around like New England states or places where there aren't such like big metropolitan areas, Maine, Vermont, the Dakotas, Montana. So this graph just demonstrates that the number of good air quality days varies based on the region. This graph illustrates the total number of employments that it's increasing over this 20-year period. It's seasonally adjusted and it showcases the annual total employments in the millions. And then a few interesting statistics I want to point out is that the ratio of good air quality days represents about 75% of the types of air quality days. So as you can see, like the good and moderate represents the 97%, as I mentioned before. Also, the average employment level is just over 3 million and with a maximum of 53.5 million. So it just goes to show the spread of the data that I'm including in this research and including different capacity airports, so from small to large. So going into this, I had two potential hypotheses. The first is that the expected effect of the expansion is that it has a negative effect on air quality. So without societal pressures or laws, airport expansion would operate without its concern on the effect on air quality because they're making decisions that are best for the airport. So low cost, things that are just beneficial for them. So it really comes down to the difference in the total cost determines whether the airport expansion will be environmentally friendly. So would they rather pay the cost up front in the planning period so it's environmentally friendly or run the risk of not being environmentally friendly afterward and then having to pay the cost later on? My second hypothesis is that the expected effect of airport expansion on air quality actually varies based on the size of the airport. So the first outcome that I thought of was that smaller airport capacity changes are undetected at the air quality index levels in the county. So it's too small to really have a read on within this county, within whatever county it's in. Outcome B, however, I thought that smaller airport capacity expansions may negatively impact the air quality. So because they're not under the spotlight or the scrutiny that larger airports might be in the public eye, I was thinking that smaller airports might be able to get away with not having as much environmentally friendly planning in their airport expansions. And then kind of on the opposite outcome C, with larger airport expansions having a positive impact on air quality. Because they're in the public eye and they have these massive operations going, I believe that they'd want to have these systems in place that they're taking into account their overall impact on the air quality in their region. So they'd have better planning and considering the environment. So my empirical methodology and equation is as follows. It's a log-log two-way fixed effect model that estimates separately by the air quality day type. And I'm going to be focusing on good air quality days. The LNAQI is an indicator of air quality measured at county I at time t. And again, it's an indicator of the type of type of air quality day, which will be good days for me. LN employment measures the aggregated airport capacity changes, capacity levels of all the airports within a given county I at time t. The control variables that I use are represented by X, which are population and household incomes. I have county and year fixed effects, and I also include white noise in this model. So when looking at the overall impact, I found that it was significant. A 1% increase in employment capacity leads to a 0.02% decrease in the ratio of good air quality days. So it was interesting seeing the overall effect in all counties, but I also wanted to explore if there was a heterogeneous treatment effect. So basically, does the effect depend on the size of the airport? So in order to determine that, I separated the employment levels into the following quartiles, ranging from 10,000 employments to 53.5 million in their corresponding quartiles, just to see if there is in fact a heterogeneous treatment effect. And I found that there actually is. As you can see in quartile 2, county between 92,000 and 430,000 employments, a 1% increase in capacity leads to a 0.1% decrease in the ratio of good air quality days. On the other side, quartile 3 actually experienced a 1% increase in capacity leads to a 0.1% increase in the ratio of good air quality days. So this kind of shows this heterogeneous treatment effect, how it varies based on the size of the airport. Now, this is without controls. I wanted to see if these results would hold true if I included controls in this equation. So when adding my control variables, I also found that there was a negative impact on good air quality days for quartile 2 and a positive impact on the ratio of good air quality days for quartile 3. Unfortunately, when adding those control variables, the overall impact was not as significant with all counties, but there was still the sign changes from negative in quartile 2 and positive in quartile 3. I also then wanted to take it a step further and separate my employment data into deciles to determine if there's any more fluctuation based on the size of the airport. So the smaller airport counties are in decile 1, and it increases all the way up to 53.5 million into the larger airport counties. And I found similar results. So smaller airport counties with increases in employment levels leads to a decrease in air quality days that were significant in deciles 3 and 4. and deciles 6 and 9 uh, go to follow the same pattern that the quartiles did, that larger airport counties with increases in employment levels leads to an increase in good air quality days. So when looking at the overall results, when the employment levels increase in a given county, the number of good air quality days increases for larger airports and decreases for smaller airports. So this actually aligns with my hypotheses 2B and 2C, that small airport capacity changes negatively impacts the air quality and larger airport expansions positively impacts the air quality in their respective counties. So at the end of this entire research study that I did, what are my main policy takeaways, implications? So I've given it some thought, and I think that better enforcement of the emission laws in smaller scale airport expansions is crucial moving forward, since that was the smaller airport expansions was where I saw a decrease in the ratio of good air quality days. So really honing in on making sure that these smaller airport expansions are abiding by these laws and having the right steps in place in order to prevent further decrease in good air quality days. As for suggestions for future research, I think that exploring the geographical variation in treatment effect in counties across the US would be an interesting take on this. Also, to extend the analysis to the post-COVID period, I think that since I ended my time period was 1999 to 2019, right before COVID impacted all the airport function. I think it'd be interesting to take that post-COVID to see what those changes are and seeing how it changed in the last 5 years. So I want to thank Dr. Ghosh and Dr. Anami for their support throughout my undergraduate experience. Thank you for listening. And does anyone have any questions?